Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
The Rock and Review is honored to bring on the actual owner and founder of Blick Street Records. It is Bill Straw, with an illustrious career in the music industry with Capitol, with MCA, Warner Brothers, Curb, and now his own label. Bill, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
You know, it's fun talking with you. After I feel like I know you from seeing on some of the videos and documentaries, and you've really helped get Eva Cassidy's catalog out into the public.
She's she's one of the more talented artists I've ever heard. So that's the secret to having a hit on your label, is to have a great artist.
Yes.
Everything else, as long as you don't screw it up, then everything else works.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story also, because you when you started your own label with Blick Street Records, you already had some artists on there, but one of your artists is actually who brought Eva Cassidy to your attention, right?
That's correct. Grace Griffith.
And so you heard the value in Eva's music, and after her passing, you ended up talking with her parents about doing these albums and doing these things that you've created since that time, right?
True. We had just released Grace's first album, and she called me and she said, quote, "We have this wonderful nightingale I'm afraid we're going to lose. Can I send you a tape?" And so she sent me the Live at Blues Alley album, queued up to Fields of Gold. And so it arrived a couple of days later. And, seconds into it, I knew it was extraordinary. And by the time I heard the whole album, I said, this girl's one of the best ever. And it just like that. And I also knew that she wasn't going to be with us. So I was very conflicted. Eventually, I contacted her parents. I didn't know what her parents would want to market the music or not, because it's all painful. And so in time, we made a deal. It was about a year later that we made the deal.
Well, and the songs, all of the songs on there, having listened to the whole acoustic album, are just incredible, such as Wade in the Water, and so many incredible selections. But I got to bring this up, Bill, to where, since you've been working with her music and putting out these albums and everything, it's like she's been #1 on the British and Irish charts, and before, when she was alive, she was an incredible regional talent in Washington, D.C., but her music has truthfully gone international now.
That's true. I mean, she probably sold maybe around 10,000 units in the Washington, D.C. area of the Live at Blues Alley album.
Right.
But she's had 3 #1 albums in the UK and 10 gold albums, which is, she's in a very rare company there.
Yes.
Songbird is, it's certified platinum here. I'm not sure what the total sales is, but it's someplace between 1 and 2 million units here. But she is more exposed in the UK because their population base is about 1/5 of the US. And so she's sold twice as many records and to 1/5 of the population size of this country as she has here.
Well, now, what do you attribute that to, Bill, in England, with her voice and her songs becoming so embraced there? The market is different. The population is in a geographic area about the size of the state of Alabama. And so you have 60+ million people in that area. And it's served by the BBC radio and television. So their media reaches a higher percentage of their people every time they have an event. So it is that concentrated media. Here, it's all over the place, as you know. Right.
And there's so many formats and so many people listening to different formats that you can very easily go 10 years and not know who's big in another format if you're not listening to it.
Right.
unless you watch the Grammys. And a lot of times the best stuff isn't on the Grammys. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to bring up also about the documentary that came out, which watching that, is just riveting. Can you talk a little bit about that, Bill?
Yeah, we had done a documentary with a BBC, ex-BBC producer, and we done one called Timeless Voice, which was before the one you're referring to.
Right.
And that is, the theme of that was the effect she's had on a new generation of young female singers. So it was like that was the perspective. And so we decided to do another one. And I approached Attracta McLaughlin, who's the producer, and said, why don't we take the band in the original venue, which is Blues Alley,
right,
put up the tapes and have them watch the show from the original gig and reminisce. And so it's no more complicated than that. But as your producer knows, it's always more complicated than she did a beautiful job of putting it together.
It's a riveting video. It was one of those things when it was sent to me, I had to watch it all. I mean, it really grabs you. And I also wanted to bring up that it's the 25th anniversary of that album also, correct?
That was the reason we put the video. We've had that in the can for a while. And it was a question of what the right time was. And we thought, well, I don't want to wait for 50.
No.
So this is the year. And we're going to do a 25th anniversary commemorative album of Live at Blues Alley. So we'll remix it and all of that kind of, some of it will be remixed. It'll all be remastered with a new spiffed up package. There's quite a vinyl demand for her.
Oh, I'm sure.
We'll have vinyl, at least in the UK.
Right.
And we'll have probably include some of the videos. You can't really do that here because of the licensing problem. So it's,
I'll tell you what struck me also, and I'd heard her music before, but I didn't put it all together until I was really preparing to interview you, about Eva Cassidy's body of work. But her range is what, obviously she just has such a pure tone to her voice. And I think what you accomplished in this latest album with Acoustic is that you can really hear her voice isn't overpowered by instrumentation.
That's true. She did a lot of solo gigs, just her and guitar. And they did a lot of demos. And every time her producer, Chris Biondo, every time he got a chance, he'd put her in the studio. When I first heard Blues Alley, the thing that struck me was her versatility. Now he would go into, I said, she covers Roberta Flack, she covers Aretha, Bonnie Raitt there's Ella there. And that's what kept her from getting a deal with a major, because they didn't know how to market her. So we were an independent label. And so what was a negative to a major label was a positive to us.
Right.
Because public radio and public television audiences value versatility. Mainstream really doesn't, because the formats are so tight, you can't play all of that on one show. It's just the way it goes. When God invented the program directors, he limited everybody else's music.
But thank goodness also, Bill, for independent labels like yourself, because obviously, with our show being based out of here in Nashville, there are so many artists that find it challenging to find a home. And from your career with the music labels that they do need to put artists into niche. And I think that's challenging. It's more challenging now than probably ever, to where you have so many artists falling into Americana because they don't fit one of the normal niches. And thankfully, a label like you can take on these artists.
Well, I've always been interested in the artists that the majors weren't interested in. I mean, I worked for years to get Al Jarreau a deal, and they didn't know what to do with him.
Right. What a boy. What a talent.
And I took him to Capitol when I was at Capitol, and Kelly Gordon was there. He wrote That's Life and co-produced Billy Joe and all of that kind of stuff. And so we took those guys down there and they didn't hear it. Then they eventually heard it and became big fans.
Mhm.
And so it's just, never had competition for any act I ever bid on.
You're ahead of your time then.
Yeah. It's just it's a different audience.
Mhm.
And there weren't, the majors weren't paying too much attention to the independent audiences and public radio, et cetera. They are now.
Right.
They are now. I mean, Bruce Lundvall had signed Eva. Well, he'd worked with Eva a little bit and put her with a group called Pieces of a Dream, which was kind of a smooth jazz outfit.
Right.
They were good, but it wasn't Eva's trip. And Bruce knew what was there. But he couldn't, his young guys that were marketing it threw up their hands. And he said later, he got his reward because he signed Norah Jones as a result of that.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't gonna miss out twice. And so I would say Bruce was one of the first major label executives to dip into that audience. And since then, everybody's done it. You know, now,
well, thankfully you found a home, for Eva's music and have been able to get it out there. And I want to make sure too, for our audience, and I know that, the acoustic album's out, the documentary's out. Where are the best places to go, Bill, for people to be able to buy, download these, add them to playlists? How can they get a hold of this music?
Well, it's on all of the, it's on Spotify, Amazon, Apple. If you want physical and you don't have a local record store, you can always do Amazon.
Okay.
And people occasionally contact us, and I'll send it to them, but I'll also direct them to Amazon. It's whatever's easiest for the consumer, really,
Totally.
what they're comfortable with doing. But we have 11 or 12 albums out now. We're going to have a commemorative album on Blues Alley in May, which was
Excellent.
25 years after it was released. And believe that. And then we're working on an orchestral album.
Amazing.
And we have a few tracks on that. That'll probably, it's not going to come out until at least next year.
Okay.
I had another album ready to go called Walking After Midnight, which is really more like a Western swing album, an accidental Western swing album, because she had a live gig one night and it was a really small club. They wouldn't let a drummer in the room because there was a fancy restaurant next door. So her drummer stayed home. Her keyboard player was busy with a gig he had in DC. And so she brought in a fiddle player friend. And so now you got the interplay between the fiddle and an electric guitar, Western swing. And so that was all set to go. We released a couple of tracks digitally, and Blue Skies was the first one. Second one was Ain't No Sunshine, and she's got at least the second best version of Ain't No Sunshine I've ever heard.
Which is always one of my favorite songs, Bill. Well, I'll tell you, I'm so thankful that you're curating this music, for Eva Cassidy's music and everything, and with the brand new album Acoustic that came out, also the documentary. Just want to tell you, Bill Straw from Blick Street Records, thank you so much for joining the Rock Review. Can't wait to hear more of this music that you're bringing out.
Well, thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.